Chapter 40. She was Queen of Hawaii at last. Hawaii opened up to her as she had opened up to Bernard, like a flower whose bell is deep and sticky, like a book with satin pages, like a fruit so swollen with juice it moans for the prick of the knife. Despite Julietta's half-hearted objections, Lee Cherie spent Thursday with Bernard, and everywhere the two redheads went, Hawaii was there to receive them. They picnicked in a forest beneath the volcano. Ants, perhaps bearing tiny leis, swarmed to greet them. Bernard bit into a tomato. He spit out its seeds. The seeds formed a circle on the ground. They sat inside the circle. Intent on wishing them aloha, the ants stormed the circumference, but the circle would not yield. Lee Cherie passed Bernard the pickles. Bernard handed Lee Cherie the cheese. From somewhere in the jungle, the wind knocked bamboo together, making a musical clack, 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 like the teeth of a wooden idol. Doors of yellow ginger blossoms, on hinges that never need oiling, opened and closed in the wind. Bernard popped a can of Primo, the native Hawaiian beer. Although beer is one of the few neutral foods, being neither yin nor yang, acidic nor alkaline, solar nor lunar, masculine nor feminine, wholly dynamic nor wholly inert, although beer perpetually idles in neutral, and therefore may be the perfect beverage for the dispassionate and indecisive last quarter of the 20th century, the princess did not drink beer. She was content to drink the warm suppers of Maui. And after lunch, the ants looking on in a state of frenzy, she drank her lover's cum. It doesn't taste like plastic, she thought. It tastes like a lot like poi. Ah, Hawaii. There is lovemaking that is bad for a person, just as there is eating that is bad. That boysenberry cream pie from the Thrifty Mart may appear inviting, may in fact cause all 900 taste buds to carol from the tongue. But in the end, the sugars, the additives, the empty calories, clog arteries, disrupt cells, generate fat, and rot teeth. Even potentially nourishing foods can be improperly prepared. There are wrong combinations and improper preparations in sex as well. Yes, one must prepare for a fuck, the way an enlightened priest prepares to celebrate Mass, the way a great matador prepares for the ring, with intensification, with purification, with a conscious summoning of sacred power, and even that won't work if the ingredients are poorly matched. Oysters are delectable, so are strawberries, but mashed together? Eek. Every nutritious sexual recipe calls for at least a pinch of love. And the fucks that rate 4-star rankings from both gourmets and health food nuts use cupfuls. Not that sex should be regarded as therapeutic or to be taken for medicinal purposes. Only a dullard would have such a millstone around the nibbled neck of a lay, but to approach sex carelessly, shallowly, with detachment, and without warmth to dine night after night in erotic greasy spoons. In time, one's palate will become insensitive. One will suffer, without knowing it, emotional malnutrition. The skin of the soul will fester with scurvy. The teeth of the heart will decay. Neither duration nor proclamation of commitment is necessarily the measure. There are ephemeral explosions of passion between strangers that make more erotic sense than many lengthy marriages. There are one-night stands in Jersey City more glorious than 6-month affairs in Paris. But finally there is a commitment, however brief, a purity, however threatened, a vulnerability, however concealed, a generosity of spirit, however marbled with need, an honest caring, however singed by lust, that must be present if couplings are to be salubrious, and not slow poison. Having consumed for years only junk food sex, some of it undeniably finger-licking good, Princess Li Shuri was now the recipient, in abundance, of both lusciousness and nourishment, and needless to say, it was agreeing with her. Trying to make love standing up in the Canopoli surf, tourists on the sands were none the wiser, enjoying her lover's reflection, crimson pubes and all, in a jungle pool near Hana, bouncing her sex-sore bottom along a riding trail at Makawao. She'd never seen anyone stand in the saddle before, or bring down a mango with a thrown blade. That Bernard. It was as if all her travel poster fantasies had finally come true. Chapter 41. And that yet the pea under the mattress complained. It broadcast. Peep, peep, peep. Through the most luxuriant stuffing, its bruising litany. Poverty, waste, injustice, pollution, disease, armaments, sexism, racism, overpopulation. A boring inventory of social ills, atop which Princess Meat could never quite get comfortable. Nagged by the pea, she thought of returning that night to the Carefest and to the purpose of her mission to Maui. Through the Kamaina grapevine, however, she overheard a report of the day's session in Bunyan Park that inflamed the least attractive aspects of her red-headedness. It seemed that the Carefest microphones had been seized first by Montana and Judy's gangs, who harmonized on 38 verses of the popular ballad All Men Are Rapists. Oddly enough, many men in the audience sang along. Then Gay Bob and his friends, who read aloud a long poetic manifesto entitled Everyone is Homosexual. Then, by the Reverend Booker T. Kilimanjaro, who, Bible in one hand, machete in the other, launched into his specialty, a sermon. Pilate was a honky imperialist. Jesus was a nigger. Delivered while performing the latest disco dances. Meanwhile, the seminar on solar energy was eclipsed, and the lecture on immortality drugs was killed. When the yogi who had taken the cobweb apart attempted, at the request of management, to cosmically charm the interlopers into relinquishing the podium, she was hurled from the stage and was last seen limping toward the first aid tent, slouched over in the broken collarbone asana. Li Shuri was furious. You know what we should do? And I'm serious. Take that last stick of you-know-what over there and just run those rude assholes right out of the park. The Carefest has turned into a can of worms anyhow. We might as well finish it off. Oh yeah? You mean you would have me blow up something that just because I didn't approve of it? What do you think I am, a vandal? A fascist? A fucking critic? Shit, said Li Shuri. No, I don't think you're any of those things. I think you're an outlaw. And I'm starting to think that outlawism, the way you practice it, has got just as many rules as anything else. That one hurt. They were sitting in the second-story window of the Blue Max, and as if to drive off the sting of her accusation, he was tempted to pull the last stick of you-know-what from his clothing, ignite it, and toss it into the front street. He composed himself, though, and replied, You obviously acquired your knowledge of explosives from watching cartoons on television. All those barnyard animals and psychopathic house pets shoving TNTs in each other's beds. Well, real bombs do more than burn your fur off, I'm afraid. And there's no Hollywood animator to put you back together in the next frame. Dynamite's not some kind of a custard pie in the hands of pissed-off pussycats and vengeful ducks. It's not a practical joke. All right. You don't have to make excuses. Apparently an outlaw has grave responsibilities, just like a general or a judge. That did it. He jerked the deadly cylinder from inside his shirt and thrust the fuse into the candle flame that was dutifully going through the motions of romantic restaurant flick upon the tabletop between them. Instead of throwing the dynamite into the street, however, he held it over his head like Liberty's torch while Li Shuri looked on, paralyzed with horror. Other patrons of the Blue Max looked on in horror, too. A waitress found the voice to scream. A surfer dove over the bar. The fuse sputtered and sparked, like a life intensely lived. This is the way to burn. The fuse seemed to be saying to the more docile, slow-witted Candlewick. Brilliantly, ecstatically, irrepressibly, this is the way to burn. The fuse had an appointment and could not wait around to see if the Candlewick had the courage to follow its advice. Chapter 42. At the last possible second, Bernard jammed the fuse into his mouth. It sizzled in saliva. He pulled it loose with his teeth. "Ouch," he cried. It was the only word spoken. Finishing his tequila mockingbird in a gulp, he assisted the stunned princess to her feet and ushered her to the stairs. Nobody tried to stop them. The normally clamorous Blue Max was as quiet as prayer. He walked her to the Pioneer Inn. "Go up and pack," he said. "You and Julietta meet me at the boat as quick as you can." He leaned forward to kiss her, but thought better of it. There was a nasty burn on his tongue. Chapter 43. Sunset lingered a long while that evening. It was as if a Mai Tai had been spilled in the sky. Streaks of grenadine, triple sec, maraschino, and rum seeped over the horizon, puddled upon the sea. Like a moth with a sweet tooth, the hijinks glided toward the spill. The marijuana smuggler and an associate attended to the sailing. Julietta squatted in the stern, still as a toad. Lee Cherie and Bernard sat in the bow and talked. "I'm sorry that I upset you," she said. "This is not an easy time to be a princess." "No, and it's not an easy time to be an outlaw, either. There's no longer any moral consensus in the days when it was generally agreed what was right and what was wrong. An outlaw simply did those wrong things that needed to be done, whether for freedom, for beauty, or for fun. The distinctions are blurred now. A deliberately wrong act, which for the outlaw is right, can be interpreted by many others to be right, and therefore must mean that the outlaw is wrong. You can't tilt windmills when they won't stand still. You can't tilt windmills when they won't stand still." He gazed into the sunset briefly, then broke into his dentistry-defying grin. But it doesn't really bother me. I've always been a square peg in every round hole but one. Speaking of that, this is not an easy time for lovers either. With the divorce rate up to 60%, how can anyone attend a wedding with a straight face anymore? I see lovers walking hand in hand, looking at each other as if nobody else was alive on Earth, and I can't help thinking that in a year, more or less, they'll each be with someone new, or else nursing broken hearts. True, most lovers don't work at it hard enough, or with enough imagination or generosity, but even those who try don't seem to have any ultimate success these days. Who knows how to make love stay? Who knows how to make love stay? He thought for several moments before he answered. "I guess love is the real outlaw," he said. She wanted him to say more, and perhaps eventually he would have, but the next word he uttered was "Yikes!" And her own next words were "Sweet Jesus!" Julietta's words were beyond the capabilities of the Remington SL3, and the words of the smugglers were obscured by the whoosh. It went whoosh as it shot by, a sleek penatella of frozen light, pulsating with polka dots of every color, traveling a mere 1,000 feet or so above the water at incredible speed and mopping up the last of the sunset as if it were a bar rag from outer space. Actually, and everyone aboard agreed on this in subsequent discussions, it had not pulsated with lights of every color. One color was notably absent. There wasn't any red. On the ship's radio that night, they learned that the numerous other parties had reported having seen a UFO rise up from Halikala and disappear over the Pacific. But UFO sightings were old hat around Maui, and this one received little attention on the news, but more airplay was given to a dispatch about a jailbreak in Lahaina. A man and a woman charged with dynamiting the Pioneer Inn had escaped from their cell. Noting that Maui was a small island, police predicted the couple's capture within a few hours.